Today, I'm very excited to demonstrate to you a creative use case for Agent AI, which is home design. And the reason I wanted to demonstrate this particular capability is because very recently, in March and April 2025, OpenAI came out with two new capabilities. One is the Agent SDK framework, the other are improved images. So when we're talking about the Agent SDK framework, what it essentially allows us to do is to create multi-agent workflows that will enable a much more structured design output. So rather than images randomly putting furniture wherever you want and the size of the room to be very randomized, we can specify exactly what the blueprint should look like through a series of agents that work together. And of course, better images mean better nuances and detail in terms of the actual visuals, which will generate a very beautiful final rendering. So before I jump into the demo itself, just to give you an idea of what the outputs could look like, right? So here we have a Japandi style, living room, bedroom, bathroom. We have a Maximus style, again, living room, bedroom, bathroom. And we also have Parisian modern, same living room, bedroom, and bathroom. And all three were generated by the agent, and it took only a few minutes to generate each. And as you can see with all three, they're very coordinated and in sync in terms of overall style. So let's work together and build out a Mediterranean style room. After I show you the demo of the tool, I'll also spend a few minutes at the end explaining the backend code and what that looks like. So with that, let's jump into the demo. Here we have the home designer agent. And let's say we want to build out a living room first. For the Mediterranean style room, I want 15 by 10 by 12 feet. I want 2 windows, 1 door. And just a little bit about the furnishing orientation and color scheme, right? So without boring you and populating it word by word and having you watch me type, essentially what I'm going to put in here is the type of furniture. So I want sofa with linen cushions. I want an alcove shelving, a single woven accent chair. I want the sofa to be placed against a wall. And I want a shelving alongside the wall, pendant lighting overhead, etc. In terms of the color scheme, I want that Santorini palette. So cyan blue, bright whites, a little bit of seafoam green. And then in terms of textures and styles, we're talking plasters, natural wood, linen, cotton, rattan, etc. So let me just quickly copy and paste in these results. So in terms of fixed features, so these are things that you cannot move in a room. For example, a fireplace. And since we don't have anything like that, I'm just going to put none here. And then in terms of the orientation, it's where you want these things to be relative to each other. Color palette, which we talked about, and the materials. So with that, it's going to start running and generating the result. And as it's doing that, let me explain at a very high level how it's working on the back end. So we have these cute little 7 agents working together in this multi-agent workflow enabled by Agent SDK framework. We have the first little guy here, which is the input agent. So it's able to capture everything we just put on the UI and put it in a very structured framework in the backend, which then is separated into the room layout, which is the type of room, the size of room, the furnishings, along with how they are oriented relative to each other, the overall aesthetic, so that it's Mediterranean, it has the color schemes, etc. And now in the backend, these 3 agents then feed the output agents. So the first two, the room layout on the furniture, think of that as specifying the exact blueprint of the room. So these 2 guys feed the blueprint, so it knows exactly how to orient everything relative to each other. And the reason this is important is because then it can ensure when we're talking about the final beautiful image we generate and the code we generate for a designer agent, that these things are consistent. And so the blueprint agent takes the room furnishing layout, generates the blueprint. The blueprint then takes the aesthetic, generates the final design. And the Blender agent, what it essentially does is, this is an open source tool used by designers so that they can actually build out the actual layout of the design. So when I generate the code, I can essentially paste it in here to start that design process. So it's not just about a pretty picture, but it's actually enabling the design. So we have the final result. In terms of the blueprint, right? The reason this is so important is that this is what gives structure to what we're building out. So spell out the specific dimensions. It'll put things into zones. So we've got a seating zone, which we have the sofa, the coffee table, etc. We have the placement of these things. We have another zone for shelving, another one for decorative components, and then we also have the specific layout, which is a sofa needs to be placed against the wall, etc. And so what this enables us to do is essentially generate something that's very specific to the layout of the room. With that, we also have this final rendering prompt, which is taking the blueprint structure and layering in the artistic direction. This final rendering prompt is what feeds into the image generator so that the image we generate is very specific and structured and not just, a furniture size, strewn all over the place. Great. So now we have this beautiful Mediterranean style room. Again, we have the sofa that's behind the wall. We have shelving. We have this pendant overhang, lamp that we talked about. We have the rattan seating, which is a little bit cut off. So as you can see, in terms of the style aesthetic, it's very much in line with what we hope to generate. Let's say we didn't really like this particular design, and so let's render another image to see what that could also look like. Great. So again, we got the rattan chair, the sofa behind the wall, the pendant ceiling, and the shelving. And to be honest with you, I think I enjoyed this image much better. And so let's go ahead and copy that to our room design. Now, jumping around a little bit, I also generated the result for the bedroom and then also for the bathroom. And so as you can see, because we kept the aesthetic the same, you can have a very nice consistency in terms of the design layout. So copy and pasting the images in here, we have now built out our Mediterranean style room within a few minutes, right? And this is just a great way to demonstrate how not only can we generate beautiful images, but we can use agent frameworks to make it very structured as well. And just a really quick recap before we show you the coding details. In the backend, essentially what we have is an input agent, some internal agents on the room layout, furnishing, aesthetic, the blueprint agent, the Blender agent, and then the final designer agent. And one quick thing on the Blender agent, the general idea here is that it's nice to have an image, but a lot of times designers actually need to know how to then move around and elevate these designs, right? And so this is an example where not only do we generate the images, but we can look at the specific Blender code to basically paste in so that from here it's a starting point, but then designers can actually take it and do something with it in Blender itself. And just for context, Blender is an open source tool that designers use to build out various models. So here you have it. Now going into the actual code of this particular tool. So if we go into the actual home design tool and we look at the code itself. So in the backend, if you look at these things, it's essentially just a series of agents working together. And you got this is just kind of the UI and the instructions on how it works together. But essentially you got the blueprint agent, the aesthetic agent, the furnishing agent, the room layout agent, the Blender code agent that we just talked about, and then the final rendering, the image agent. And what these things are able to do is because we're using this framework and agents are able to hand off things to each other, you can see that the aesthetic agent hands off into the final rendering, as does the blueprint agent, which hands off to both the Blender file and the final rendering. So essentially the blueprint agent makes sure that this guy and this guy are all coordinated in terms of the design. And so there you have it. This is a very quick overview of how these various components can work together. And just in terms of a quick recap, why did we do this? The idea is to show that agents can be creative and create beautiful things, right, at the same time. This doesn't replace true designers, but it can give a starting point. It can show from a customer's perspective, high level what they're thinking. And the reason we're able to do this now is because this Agent SDK framework provides a very specific structure, and the improved image capability enables us to generate beautiful images with a lot more nuance. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this short tutorial, and definitely feel free to reach out if you have any questions.